Welcome back, everybody, to Edge of the Rabbit Hole. I'm author and ghost historian Mike Ricksecker. With me, as always, is Vanessa Hogle, my co-hostess, and down in the chat room, Shana, our chat shenanigator, shaking everything up. We have a really special treat tonight. We have Keith Johnson, demonologist, back with us. You, of course, probably remember him from the Tap Show what was that, 15 years ago. But world-renowned demonologist. He's written a number of books now and just recently appeared here on the Ghost Adventures show at the Harrisville Farmhouse. So, Keith, welcome back.
It's good to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And little surprise here. I think we have somebody on hold. So
who could that be?
I don't know. So let me see here. Who is on hold here? Hello, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hello, I'm here. Hi.
Is that Carl?
No, this is Keith. I'm ready for our show. I wanted to tell about Keith Jr.
He's trying to do a very bad impression of me, and if he doesn't stop, I'll do an impression of him.
No, it's totally inaccurate. No.
So
my word, I'm not on the air already, am I?
You are.
Oh,
actually.
yeah.
I'm dominating the interview. I'm sorry. The show is Keith's.
It is Keith's show, but
I'm here. Is it too early for a question?
Well, want to talk to you guys, of course, about what happened on Ghost Adventures there. So
sure,
it's Keith's show, but what happened? But what happened, Carl, was to you, and then it seemed like at the end there, your brother kind of came to the rescue.
In Ghost Adventures,
yes.
The recent episode, of course, was actually, not staged. This was not scripted at all. It was the actual investigation that transpired in the Round Top Farmhouse, and that actually took place in mid-August this year, not so long ago. Yes, I just felt so depleted. I felt like I'd run a marathon after that. What you saw was genuine. It did kind of, the editing made it appear as though I had suddenly been taken over. I was actually talking with the two guys, there were actually three at that point, Aaron, Billy, and Zach, and saying, I want to be responsible as a demonologist, but I also feel compelled to try and experiment. I want to give vent to this. Something's pushing through, and I am so urged to let it have voice. And so I said, but I don't know if I should do this. And Zach Bagan said, Carl, please don't go. Let it happen. So we all decided I would. And it's just like a wave rushing over me. That's how I can describe it. In a sense, I was taken over. I was overwhelmed. At any point, I could have gotten up and walked out of that room.
Right.
But it just felt like it would have been wrong to do so. I had to discover. I had to see it through. That's what I felt. So I had this, conflicting interest going on within me, and it's an internal struggle, and it became very strong. But I just felt, I could barely get out of that chair afterwards. And you see it encapsulated in like a minute or so airtime, but that went on for a better part of an hour. And there was this thunderstorm going on about us outside all through it. And,
it was quite an atmosphere. There was a thunderstorm going on, very violent thunderstorm, continual lightning, and that was natural special effects there that night.
Now that is completely different than how it happens for me when it comes to channeling. So I'm quite intrigued. Keith, when you saw this going on, what did you think was happening, and what went through your mind as how to deal with it?
I knew I had to get to Carl because I wanted to be there to try to control it in some way in case it got out of control. Because when something enters into you, which I would not want to happen to me. I would very specifically not allow that to happen. I wouldn't experiment with it. But I wanted to be there because I knew that there was a very, very vicious, controlling entity in this house. It's the same one that I happened to deal with when I was still a teenager, the first time I came to that house back in the 1970s. And so I had to be in the same room with Carl just to make sure everything was all right and to pray over him in case things did get out of control, which it seemed they were about to at the time.
Now, the thing I'm interested in about this is, Keith, this is your brother. This
Yes.
is your twin brother that this is happening to. How is that hitting you emotionally, seeing your brother go through this?
Well, it was, I really had to, buckle up and get in there because I didn't want anything taking over him. I felt extremely protective and different when it was back when we were teenagers. It was not as personal. Now, when I saw it actually affecting him, then it became very, very personal, very personal. So I came in there and I did pray over him that he would be released and nothing would be able to claim him and take control of him or attach itself to him in any unnatural way.
Right.
I did call out for Keith at that time too.
Well, and Carl, that begs me to question here what you were saying during this, at least what I saw on TV, because obviously I wasn't there, was this that was coming through you was asking y'all to not leave. You kept repeating, "Don't leave, don't leave." Were you aware at the time of that happening why it was asking you to not leave, or have you thought about it since?
It wasn't a conscious thought. It wasn't volitional at all, unless that was stemming from my subconscious. I was not willing it. I was letting it speak, whatever it was. And when it was like, "Don't leave," that was talking to everybody in the room. Don't leave. In other words, there was a desperation to that cry, and there's "Don't leave." As I recall, and my memory is somewhat sketchy of it, but I do recall that what I was feeling was that it didn't want Zach and Billy and Aaron and me to leave. Didn't want us to leave the house. That's what it was saying. So it wasn't so much a voice from the past as it was compelling the people present, the living people, don't leave. Which is strange because they were there to basically investigate and try to quell this influence. But it was just telling them not to leave. Don't leave, don't leave. That's what I remember of it. And I really, when I got up, it was like as if I donated blood or something. I stood up too fast. You can actually, when I saw it, you can actually see me staggering as I went out of that room. I'm like, I felt like I was not on even ground. Now, I could have fallen down if I didn't steady myself. I could have just fallen, which probably would have been better for the television show, the episode. But, it's just, and much of that, I didn't even know when the camera was on me because they didn't have a big television camera. We have a red LED light on it. You just, they're walking around with a handheld camera and I don't know when that's on or not. So I was like staggering out of the room and bracing myself so that it didn't fall.
Now, during that time, I've only watched the episode the one time, but during that time of the episode, I believe I recall you making mention, Carl, a comment about the black smoke. So was that black smoke affecting you in this situation?
Well, yes, it was. Not emotionally at that point, except I felt kind of, creepy being in that room again and alone. But I saw this ushering in, this just as I had 46 years ago, but in that room. I had seen it upstairs originally. And now people are seeing that in our time. It got dark in the room and I saw this coming around the corner. It actually didn't penetrate the wall. It's like it had the easiest egress to come around the downstairs hallway and go into the room where I was. And so seeing that come in, that was not an emotional response, except for the sense of like, oh no, here it is. But it wasn't penetrating my emotional frame. I was actually objectively observing this coming in. My first inclination was, oh, wait till I tell these guys this, I'm seeing this. And then I thought, oh no, this sounds too good to be true. You know, if I come out and say I'm seeing this smoky thing issuing into the room, I don't know if they're going to believe me. You know, I have no corroboration at that point. I don't know. You know, maybe I shouldn't even say it. That's what I was thinking. And so the camera's not on in here, so nobody's going to know what's coming in. However, that was verified later because other members of the team did see that. Okay, and they actually got photographic evidence of it. So I'm glad I said it. Yeah. I'm glad I mentioned it, what I experienced.
Keith, now you were back in the command center at that time. Were you seeing that from where you were?
I didn't see it. No, I didn't see it. But as we were approaching the house earlier on that evening, my brother Carl and Zach both saw it. We were outside of the house and we saw it inside. I didn't see it personally, but they saw it inside as if it was lurking, waiting for us to come in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I have not seen it, but I know Carl had seen it back years ago, the first time we ever came to the Round Top Road farmhouse back in the early 70s when the Perrin family lived there. He had encountered this when he was upstairs. And my encounters there were somewhat different, but
you had the encounter with the window. You had the encounter with the window.
Oh, yes, I did have the encounter with the window. And of course, that was a window that could not be shut because it was oppressively humid, and they even tried taking a hammer to it, and they could not close it.
But, I think Carl's heating something up in the microwave.
Yeah.
How did you know?
We can hear it.
Why are you doing a microwave during the interview, Carl? We're
supposed to keep up my strength because I'm not in the studio, and who knows what those guys are eating, Mike and everything. You know, they probably
they're
got
not eating,
too.
Carl. They're not eating anything.
Well, I am drinking my coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, by the way, Sandra and I really enjoyed your coffee, Mike, very much.
Great. Well, right now is the perfect time to mention that this episode is brought to you by a Haunted Road Roast. It helps you hunt ghosts.
Yeah.
Tim's going to be so happy.
Yeah. We enjoyed having that every single morning. That was very, very good.
Good,
I must say.
Well, next time I see you, I'll have to set you up with some more, for sure.
Great. So back when I was originally at that house, of course, I was upstairs with some of the daughters, and they were telling me how frightened they were, of course, and you could just feel the energy building and building in that room. And I personally never believed that was a human spirit. I always believed it to be a demonic spirit. And you could feel the energy, the negative energy building and building. They told me how frightened they were. And of course, the story is I asked them if they have any religious beliefs. They said, yes, they're a Catholic. So I said, all right, when you're frightened, try calling upon the name of Jesus. Now, as soon as I said that name, that window came slamming shut with tremendous force. Really, it just slammed shut. And one of the girls who was sitting on the bed got slapped with quite a bit of force on the left side of her head, which is significant to the demonic spirit coming in counterclockwise from the left. And she screamed and began wailing, and they were so frightened. And then you could just feel that energy just drawing out of you. It was like it was electrified. But I kept praying. I mentioned the name of Jesus again, twice more, and whatever it was left that room. It left the room immediately. Now, of course, it was not that impressed with me, I'm sure. I was about 128 pounds at the time. I had long hair, way past my shoulders, you know.
By all accounts from the girls, you actually looked like Jesus at that point.
That's what they said later, yes. That's what they said, yes. Yeah, but
so maybe that helped.
Which daughter was it? Cindy, I think. She'd seen Keith coming up. He's holding a Bible. He's got shoulder-length blonde hair. And she goes to her mother, Carol, and she says, Mom, Jesus is here.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
Nobody
said that about me. Said that about Keith.
Yeah. But the spirit that was there, obviously was not afraid of me, but what it represented, that the fact that I was calling upon the name of Jesus in faith, that's what caused the spirit to leave. That's what caused it to instantly leave the room, because it just could not tolerate the power of the name. So it wasn't actually me that the spirit was afraid of, but rather the power of Jesus in that room.
Right.
And really, it stirred things up in the house. Of course, it left the room right then. And we went downstairs, and the parent daughters were all jumping on me and kissing me and everything like that. Oh, we're so glad you're here, and
asking him to bless them.
yes, yeah. And I wish the disturbance in that house had ended right there, but it didn't. These things hide. They hide, and then they come back stealthily. They wait for an opportune time. They're opportunists, and they're also very parasitic. So that's when the next attack there was launched against the mother, Carolyn parent.
Okay.
Let me ask you, with what you just said, because I'm supposed to be going there next year. Considering what happened with Carl, is somebody like myself going to be more in danger?
Well, know what you're up against. Be prepared, because the first time I went to that house, I was, of course, I'd been working my landscaping job, and I was praying all the time. I was mowing lawns, and of course, nobody could hear me because I was mowing the lawn. But I'd been very, very spiritual prepared. I was reading scripture, specific scripture to this situation. And and of course, we always pray Ephesians 6, putting on the armor of God, which is a great protection. And when you pray Ephesians 6, the actual entities will know that you're covered by the armor of God. Now, I can't explain exactly how they see that. They do perceive it. That you have that protection around you. And it has to be really sensitive to know that as well. Have the biblical gift of discernment. But I always take that precaution, especially in a situation like that. So, please try not to open yourself up to something like that, because it is a very, very hostile spirit that is there, and it is not human. It's not something that's ever walked the earth in human form as we know humanity today. So, and that has been there. I don't know how long it's been there, but that whole area.
It's well before the house was born.
Well before the house, yes. I'm pretty sure that the native peoples there had to contend with it as well, and were affected by it.
And I don't know why I just said well before the house was born. That is very bizarre.
It's an interesting way to term it, sure.
That is very bizarre. I don't know why I just said that. We're just going to drop that part right there and leave that. That's something for me to think about.
Yeah.
It does become like houses around. Any dwelling place, if it's been there for long enough, it's going to absorb memories through principles we don't fully understand. It takes on a presence. That house, and people have said that house has a personality to it.
Yeah, well, that house was built in 1736, and it was refurbished in 1768. Even before then, there were little outbuildings, smaller buildings on the property. So, and the property was originally deeded to Roger Williams. And of course, many, many years before the white settlers even came there. And this is something in that property that goes back for just many, many, many years. I think millennium probably. And it's something that resents humanity and does not like to be controlled. It obviously has a gripe against God and against humanity. And, that's why I would not go into a situation like that unless I were spiritually protected. And that's why I was watching out for others as well. There was a member of the crew that was, he wasn't taken over, but suddenly he felt something electric around him. And it was like really, really disturbing him. I laid hands on him. I prayed for him, and instantly it was gone. Again, it's not my power, but it is the power of faith and what that represents.
Yeah, it seemed like from what they were at least showing us that a lot of people were getting wiped out and drained that night.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It can be a very, very draining situation. Yeah, a lot of people were affected. And there was only one time that I felt really affected, and that's when we were sitting around a table and we had momentarily clasped hands, but there was the spirit communication that was kind of grating on me. It just grated on me, and I felt very oppressed for a moment. So I did break hold and just prayed for protection, relied on faith and on the armor of God and such.
Okay. Very good.
Yes, my participation in that investigation was almost cut short because there I was getting close to midnight and thunderstorms going around. Now, my colleague in Panorama Paranormal, Elise Gianmarco Carlson, she was present. She wasn't in the house at that time. And she was outside in, the rain or in her car. And I just wanted to get back out to her and say, let's get out of here. I'd had enough. I'm tired.
Yeah, that's true.
Depleted.
Sometimes, and because I had my friend and team member David Grista.
Dave was there, yeah.
As well. Yeah, and you wonder how your loved ones and your people are close to you, how are they being affected by this at that very moment? That's always in the back of your mind too. And of course, I pray for protection for Sandra and my family. And Sandra was praying for me, even though it was from a distance. So. You do have to wonder about others being attacked and it launching out.
Well, David Grist, he's a seasoned paranormal investigator, and
yes.
Elise was conducting historical research on the house's background, and so they were both out there. And I just wanted to get back to our people at a certain point. This has gone on long enough, and bed seems very inviting to me now. I want to get out. And because it was like a vacuum sucking out our vital energies. It wasn't just me. Everybody in that room, in that house reported feeling that. Well, I'm not sure if Keith did, but us in that nexus of the house were feeling it. Like I remember Zach and Billy and Aaron saying, boy, I feel so winded. I just, I don't know. I'm so depleted. I feel it. I'm thinking, guys, that's just what I feel. I told them, I said, you're mirroring what I'm feeling now.
Right. Well, I have
the same thing.
Yeah, I have a friend who has his own group, Ghost Chasers. My friend Gary DeMoranville, River, and he has a number of objects, haunted objects in his apartment. He's been suffering some physical maladies lately, and just a short time ago, I was on the phone with him. He had the typical stereotypical old hag syndrome experience where he woke up and was somewhere between awake and asleep, and he actually did see a woman with no face pinning him down, and for a moment he was paralyzed. And even though it's only for a second or two, it can be terrifying, these experiences. Whether he was in a hypnotic state, I'm not sure. That's what it seemed like it was, but it does take a lot out of you, and he's feeling drained still. So shout out to Gary, and hope he's doing okay now. So
yes, hopefully so. And we can get through it.
Keith, just with what you just brought up, for you and Carl both, I have to tell you something. When I was in Ireland, the end of July, first part of August, filming, I was able to bring back relics that were entrusted to Gwen and I from a priest who passed away in 1939 in Ireland, but his diocese was in Michigan, and he was a priest who was sanctioned and trained by the Vatican to perform exorcisms. Mm. And I have 3 of his headless statues.
Oh, really? Headless statues?
6 of his Sharonavoble coins. Mm-hmm. His Last Rites Bible from 1888, and a bottle of his holy water.
Oh, really?
Sealed, that was all encased in a hole in the wall of the home that he passed away in.
Oh, my.
There since 1939.
Oh, wow.
And that was just recently recovered. That was uncovered while you were there.
Yes, it was uncovered and given to me and Gwen, and we separated the coins because they were obviously for adults and children. And if anyone ever got their hands on them, we didn't want them to be able to put two together that went to the same person. So, and due to the energy on them, you can tell which ones those were. So she and I split them, and they're all from like 1863, 1867, things like that. And I have all of that. And here's the funny thing: I'm pagan. I am very much pagan. I have felt so unbelievably protected since having this stuff in my home. I feel like I was chosen to have it.
I'm glad it's a good protection for you.
Is that odd that I feel that way, though? I mean, these are from a priest who did exorcisms. People think I'm crazy, but I feel nothing. I feel nothing but honor, and I'm extremely humbled by having these artifacts.
Well, I guess you were meant to have them then. I guess that was meant to be.
Yeah, they will be kept safe and will be passed on to my son.
Great, fantastic.
So,
well, people who haven't had the experience that you have had will judge, of course. That's just human nature. But to really experience what you have, I can understand you feeling unique and feeling it to be an honor. Because you were seemed destined to receive those coins.
Yes, and you say
perhaps you were.
You say you will be at the Round Top Roadhouse next year?
Yes.
I hope I can be there at the same time.
It's going to be what's the name of the Paracon, Mike?
She's planning on doing it during when we're up there for Ocean State Paracon.
Okay, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
All right, certainly. Yep. Well, I'd certainly love to join you.
Please do. I would love to have you. That would be great. So
we'll just all have to make a group trip of it.
Yes.
Yeah, Mike, when are you going to that house?
Probably the same time.
Yep.
I figured. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Mike, I thought you was going to come up sooner.
I mean, if we can work that out, that'd be fantastic. I mean, Rhode Island from where I'm at right now is a little bit of a trip. So.
Yes. No, I understand that. So I haven't been out your way in a while either.
Yeah, it's been a while. We'll have to have you out one of these days. I do have a couple things down here. We did have a $5 super chat from Tom McNicholas, so thank you very much, Tom, for that. Scotty Fox was wondering if there were any temperature changes when the encounters happened during that investigation with the Ghost Adventures crew.
Definitely. Oh, yeah. Noticeable. Rapid lowering of temperature, which is a classic symptom of a spirit presence. But it's almost like an unnatural feeling chill. It's just, wow, I feel this going down. Aaron was the first to notice. Aaron Goodwin, I know. And I became, I guess at the same time, I guess it was simultaneous.
And a lot of people describe that as it's a chill from within rather than from without. It's a removal of the inner warmth, inner body temperature that really starts from within. And that can be very disturbing, obviously.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I know exactly what you're talking about. The exact opposite of a hot flash.
Yeah, exactly. A cold flash, yes.
Yeah,
antithetical hot flash.
So, and then Alina was wondering if you know. Well, actually, she has two questions here. So one was, or maybe I'm just reading it wrong. Okay. Do you think the shadow person seen in the window was the main entity affecting everyone at the house?
I think it was a projection of the main entity. I think in a sense it was.
I would tend to agree. Yes, I would tend to agree. Now, remember, Carl encountered that same shadow entity back in the early 1970s when we were first there. He was upstairs and he saw it actually floating down the hallway, and actually did momentarily make physical contact with him. And of course, the new homeowner, I know you've had him on your show and talked to him. He's experienced that too, and a lot of people
spooks him.
Experienced that. Yes.
Yeah.
Now,
his son stayed away for something like 3 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, are people aware that particular entity, that what y'all saw in the sunroom, that black misty type of stuff, are people aware, or have they made claims or talked about it being able to split and appear to multiply? Because that is That's what I'm seeing, is that it can actually separate its energy and hit more than one place at a time. But it's the same thing.
You mean more
interesting observation? You know, like maybe it could divide itself, and it's one entity is intrinsically it's one entity, but it's separating, making different components of itself,
Absolutely.
which can act more or less independently. I haven't observed it doing that, but I think probably that would explain why people see it so rapidly.
Yes.
Different people in the house.
Yeah, there's some interesting, at least cultural beliefs of things like soul splitting and those type of philosophies. So that is an interesting point, Vanessa. Maybe it is doing something like that. So, but let me ask you this, Carl. You had mentioned that you thought it's a projection of the main entity that's there at the house. What is then the entity that is projecting this, or is there an idea?
Well, we have to debate as to whether shadow persons are human generated. They may seem to be. It didn't impress me as particularly human in origin. I don't think it can manifest as a person's form. Maybe it has no need to look like a person. It just is what it is. That's it in its more pure form. And our vision is able to perceive it in that sense. Because what it's doing is it's blocking out the light, and it has an opacity where you don't see through it. So it is pure entity, but it is contained at the same time. We say shapeless, amorphous, but it is still contained. It has a beginning and an end, and it looks like a funnel going through, or a tubular cloud. And you'll see it come into the room. So it's not like it's over the whole house. I don't know if it can do that, but that's probably just how it appears. That's what our eyes can perceive. But it does seek out egress. It went through a hallway when I first saw it, and I saw it come around the corner through the doorway. Why wasn't it just suddenly there?
And Carl, you went upstairs by yourself, right? I know Donna.
Yes, I'm always doing that.
Right. Donna, who was the case manager of Pyro, our organization back in the 70s, she did not accompany you upstairs, right? Or in the cellar either.
No, Donna did not want to go to the cellar, or Donna didn't want to go any place where there weren't other people.
That's probably
which I can understand,
considering the situation at the time, and because these things can be very dangerous, and what they love to do is be able to corner somebody sometimes and trap them when they strike in the dark, and they don't play fair. Actually, they really don't play fair.
And it will seek the path of least resistance. Yeah, well, that's what it did to me. Is I was suddenly there.
Yeah,
I didn't so much feel assaulted by it as I was just observing it. Yes. Oh, it's a spooky thing to observe, though.
Mm-hmm. But of course, there's been a lot of speculation on, like you said, the name of this thing, what it is. Mm-hmm. And I don't think its name has really been revealed. And there was some, of course, for years, some speculation whether this was Bathsheba Sherman. And Bathsheba Sherman was actually a devout Baptist in real life. She was a prominent parishioner of the local Baptist church. She was married and had a family. Of course, a lot of children, there's the high infant mortality rate back then. A lot of children did succumb to the diseases, but she did have a son that did live to be, a very mature adult and had children of his own. But she, of course, her headstone eventually had to be removed because people kept smashing it and breaking it. I'm going to break the witch's stone, whatever. And
ignorance.
Because the local, which is shameful. I mean, it's terrible that when somebody does that, that is it just gets to me when I see something like that, and because you're not really accomplishing anything by doing it. But doesn't it break your heart when you see that happen?
Oh, it's shameful. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
the stone has been in place for perhaps 140 years, and then it's in a moment it's shattered.
And Mike, of course, has seen some very historic buildings and objects been totally destroyed and obliterated. Irreplaceable things.
As recently as last week, as recently as last week, poor Emmett Till, and I believe it's Mississippi, his memorial has been vandalized and brutalized and destroyed and time again and shot up. And they finally had to surround it in bulletproof glass and add a siren. And as recently as last week, you have white supremacists out there trying to put a video on right in front of it. This 14-year-old young man who was wrongly.
Oh, yes. That's terrible. Yeah,
it's absolutely horrible. People's ignorance when it comes to something like this and a person's final resting place baffles my mind.
Yeah,
I never understand it.
Right, Emmett. His mother actually, despite the fact that he had been, fished out, his body had been submerged in water for quite some time, and she did insist on having an open casket.
Yes, she did.
Yeah, to show what had happened to her beloved son. And he was, of course, the body was dressed up and everything like that. But she really wanted to show this is her boy. This is life that came from her. And this is what has been done because of the senseless hatred.
Exactly. I have seen the photographs. Yes.
Yeah. And that is something. And then to find out decades later that the story was essentially made up. Mm-hmm. It's inconceivable to me. I believe the woman who made it up is still alive. As of 2012, she was. Mm-hmm. But that's for another day. I have a question in regards to demonology, in regards to demonic activity, because we all know how I don't like to throw that word around. Okay, Mike or myself don't. I'm curious. I know that the standard thought is that they are believed to be entities that have never walked the earth in human form, as you said. However, is there the possibility that those who were inherently evil in life and have passed on, is there the possibility of them, for lack of a better way of putting it, being recruited after the fact?
Some people, that's a belief that some people have. Personally, I do not believe it. I believe that, these entities were, as we said, never human. But of course, the movie, The Conjuring, in 2013, James Wan movie, The Conjuring, that was kind of the premise that they presented. Whereas Bathsheba, took gross injustice to the actual person who lived, but that she had sacrificed her daughters to Satan and then committed suicide, sacrificed herself. And so she had been recruited as a demonic spirit, having been so evil, which of course, makes for a very scary movie.
That's Hollywood for you.
Yes. Yeah. Carl, what's your take on that? About it?
I think one's attitudes and actions in life create a resonance, and this delves somewhat into what's now called quantum physics and quantum mechanics. It makes an impression in the ether around us and creates that long-lasting resonance, and soul. When I say soul, I mean this detached form from the living body and the living mind. It can degenerate into something more negative. It leaves it's to quote William Shakespeare, the evil that men do live after them. The good is often toured with their bones. Well, that's the principle here, that spirit may not in itself may not still be working mischief by volition or consciousness, but it's made something. It's made a dent in the cosmic fabric. And demonic entities can respond to that. So it creates like this vacuum. And so this person who was evil in life has contributed to that evil reservoir.
So in other words,
it gets complicated, but it's all speculation. It just seems to make sense in some instances.
To put it in layman's terms, basically what I'm taking away from that is that when you have areas that have suffered great injustice, or exceptional loss of life, whether it be through war, tribes, if it's the natives or anything fighting against each other, and lots of blood loss and violence, that is essentially, maybe like you said, punching a hole and allowing things from that other realm, or one of the layers, the lasagna layers of our existence, both past and present and future, to come in and out easier. Is that correct?
I think so. I also am mindful that the human mind, the human psyche, is in and of itself capable of immense evil and degradation. Through psychopathia and sociopathia. There are some people that are just missing that empathy, that conscience, and they punch that hole in the dimensional fabric, and it keeps on giving until eventually, through time or through other factors alleviating it, it's going to remain until it can be expiated somehow. And I think that to some degree that's what's happening in the Round Top Farmhouse. I don't know what transpired there, but the house is old enough to have taken on its own presence, its own personality. And maybe that's not so much evil in this particular case as it is inconvenient, because it's frightening and it's unpredictable. There's something that wants to be noticed there. Mm-hmm. I've seen evidence of poltergeist activity, and recently poltergeist activity in that house, and a haunting presence in that house. So there's got a lot of different elements. The basement is funky. Well, it's an old basement, of course. It smells earthen, and it's been flooded. So of course, you're going to feel this ominous presence there. But what I noticed particularly in the basement is that omnipresent sensation of being watched. There's something watching us, being observed. I can't shake that when I'm down there. And I don't feel that in every basement.
Yeah. Now, during the episode, they did run some sort of ceremony or ritual down there, and Diane Hilbert had a question in the chat.
Yes.
As if the ritual in the cellar released anything into the house. I think that was after you guys were there, but have you heard anything about that since?
Yes, that was shortly after we had left, yes.
Okay.
Well, I hope it helped. I didn't understand quite what they were doing. Ostensibly it was to quell any negative influence in that house. And that through sympathetic magic, you could call it, that seemed to, it can seem to help, somewhat like burning sage, something about more ceremony to this. Probably did some good. I don't think it did any harm, but I don't know. We'll have to see. There's still activity in the house. So stop that.
There's definitely a presence there, a very sentient presence too. There's been some visits I've made there over the years, and with various owners too. One of the previous homeowners, my wife Sandra was interviewing him, and he was saying he had experienced some minor activity. Of course, I was recording this interview, and he experienced some things here and there, but then he kind of chuckled and said, "I wish I had more to tell you." Well, when I played that recording back, you hear the homeowner saying, "I wish I had more to tell you," and then a voice suddenly says, "Tell her." Like there was more to tell, and
maybe Jerry wasn't revealing everything. I don't know.
Well, that's very possible. That's very possible, and yeah.
That brings up a good point, and there might be those who think I'm absolutely batshit crazy for asking this question, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Oh, you're a crazy woman.
Yeah,
oh my God!
Of course
All right, say
am.
it.
Yeah, Vanessa, you just are batshit crazy.
Batshit crazy.
Now with that disclaimer.
I know, right? Has anybody ever just sat down in the house and tried to speak to whatever it is that's there?
Then speak to it?
Yes.
Yes, I have.
Okay. What was your response with that? Because I'm going to be very honest with you. That is my goal. That is why I'm going.
More a subjective sensation. I felt something answering me. I didn't hear it. It's like acknowledging me. Last time I wrote, that's just what I felt. I wasn't recording at the time. Mm-hmm. I felt it was responsive to me. Not so much in words as something in my inner ear. Did you feel like
it needed it? That is something that and like I said, people can think I'm crazy all they want. I don't care. But I believe that communication is key, even when something appears. And I'm not saying this is true for this location, but even when something appears unbelievably negative, even when it gives you that feeling, sometimes all that is necessary to understand or come to an understanding is communication.
Yes. No, that's what people get shy about. You're not supposed to communicate with the spirit, especially a powerful spirit. Is that house
I
must
would
have one?
also keep in mind, though, that a lot of times these spirits can be very, very deceptive.
Oh yeah.
They'll say anything, obviously, to gain your trust, and they'll compliment you. They'll tell you how pretty you are and everything. They'll flatter you. They'll do whatever they can. They'll pose as an innocent child that's somehow trapped there and everything. But they can be very, very wily, and they really, really can masquerade. We had experience with that in our own house growing up in North Situate, Rhode Island, when my brother and sister were communicating with a spirit, and it did gain more and more of a hold, and then started to show its true colors. It became vindictive and wasn't nice anymore suddenly, and because they were my brother and sister were playing with, of course, the spirit board, and it actually locked up on them after a while. Isn't that right, Carl? You couldn't.
Yes,
really
it did.
push the
Oh,
planchette.
yeah. Then it stopped. You could. It was actually hard to budge the planchette on the center of the board.
Wow.
It's like it stalled. Although this is how it manifested anyway. One of the spirits remained nice. Just went about her business, but did want to be seen. I saw that spirit form in my parents' house in the basement 4 times. Very clear. As spirits go.
So, Tom McNicholas asks here. Well, I'm gonna throw my own question in at the end of this, but he asked, "Will the house there in Harrisville, will that ever be blessed to remove the spirits?" But I'm gonna throw this on top of it. If somebody attempted that, what do you think would happen?
If somebody attempted to bless the house?
To bless the house, to rid it of the spirits, to remove the spirits.
Well, I believe it has been on more than one occasion. What would you say, Keith? How effective that could be or should be?
There was a member of the clergy, pretty high up, and this is a story that Andrea Perrin has, that he was possibly connected to the Vatican. He was quite a high clergyman, and he came in and said he wasn't even going to try to bless the house. He said it's not worth it, and he left.
Wow.
Now, there
Just
have
too
been
much
prayers.
there?
Yes, yeah, there's just what it was overwhelming. Of course, again, I saw that, whatever it was, I experienced that fleeing a room because it feared the name of Jesus. So I wouldn't say it's omnipotent or all powerful by any means. However, there was one time I was talking to one of the homeowners, and of course I was recording, and she asked me if there'd ever been a blessing done there. And I said, well, there was clergy here, but they didn't totally rid the house of the spirits. And when I played the recording back, of course, there's a spirit voice kind of, I don't know, boasting or whatever, but it's saying not gotten rid of. It's paraphrasing what I just said. So it's that really sparked its interest and caused it to respond vocally.
Who's that? Was that a Monsignor who performed that? A bishop? No, I think it was
it was some kind of very high clergy person. Yeah.
Wasn't it the Reverend Huntington? That's who it was, right?
Was it Reverend Huntington?
Reverend John Huntington, was it?
Possibly, yeah.
I'd have to look up in my old notes if I haven't. Okay. Yeah.
Well,
anyway,
I know we've been talking about that particular house for a while in the show and all that, but Keith, when we connected earlier today, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about Slater Mill, and I know Carl has a lot to say about that as well. So now this is an interesting location I haven't yet been to, but I've talked with each of you about this. It's the first textile mill ever in America, but it's also very haunted. So what goes on there at this location?
There's been things going on there.
And hang on a second, Carl. We hear everything you're doing.
I was wrong.
I'm sorry. I have Halloween candy. I still have Halloween candy, and I didn't think you could hear that.
Oh yeah.
What you mean this rapper? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll leave it alone.
This is what happens when we invite little kids onto the show. You see, they can't keep their hand out of the candy jar, and
yeah. First the microwave, then candy wrappers.
Yes.
Okay, I'll behave.
And everything in between.
Yes. Well, after all, this is Keith's interview, or it was. It was. Okay.
Yeah.
Of course, as you mentioned, of course, Slater Mill was the first modern cotton spinning factory in the country, in the entire nation. And of course, it was opened, run by Samuel Slater, opened in 1793. There is a lot of spirit activity associated with it. One of the part of the phenomena is some people, and myself included, I've heard this, they hear a wail, sounds like a child's wail, going throughout the building. In the Slater Mill section itself, there's been things seen there, and there's 3 buildings on the site. There's the Slater Mill itself, old Slater Mill, of course, and there's the Wilkinson Mill, which was like a service facility for Slater Mill, where they built machine parts and repaired machines. And there's the Sylvanus Brown House, which is a private home, was a private home, and it was moved to that site to prevent its demolition when they put in the highway, when they put in I-95. And that's all 3 buildings have activity. Seems to be a lot in the Sylvanus Brown House. There's one time I happened to, of course, had my tape recorder with me. I was walking around in there. I had my heavy work boots on. And when I went upstairs, I played my recording back, and you could hear a woman's voice say, "Quiet." Just told me, "Quiet." Yeah. That's one of the minor things that's happened there. But there's been what looks like a little girl seen there. In fact, a young girl that Carl had on tour was badly frightened recently by something she saw there, and felt bad for her. But and again, there's very, very deceptive spirits that pretend that they're the spirits of lost children, so they can gain your trust, and you invite them in and such like that. But in the Sylvanus Brown House, there's what's some people call her Becca, and some by other names. There's a spirit named Edward there, supposedly, but a lot of people have heard footsteps, even in the daytime when normal tours are going on. They've heard footsteps, heavy footsteps upstairs when nobody's obviously there. A little girl has been seen looking out the window, and some people do get rather frightened by that. It can be rather disturbing. Now, in the Stone Wilkinson Mill, that's more of a masculine place. Some people have, because only men did work there. Men were the carpenters and the blacksmiths at the time. People have seen what they call a shadow person, or the gray man. The gray man there. It's just like a shadow figure they've seen walking by the windows there and such. And of course, in Slater Mill, there's a lot of sounds and everything. People have claimed, I've never seen this, but people have claimed to see a shadow figure inside Slater Mill itself. And people are touched occasionally, prodded, and of course there's a lot of things that go on after hours there. And of course, Carl's instituted a lot of the tours that have to do more with the paranormal there. And Carl, you want to mention that a little bit?
There's a program I created and developed for Slater Mill. It is called Mills and Mysteries, a Ghostly Experience. Wow. And I developed that because my first year there was 2006 to 2007, and I was doing a docent and programs development at Slater Mill. I had so many people after a tour tell me, "Excuse me, this is going to sound crazy, but is your mill haunted?" Because guests to the mill had seen, to the museum, had seen objects move on their own, or maybe there was a lady had her hair lifted up, and even the figure was seen. Keith mentioned, well, more than once, more than one building, but Keith mentioned the spirit of Becca, the little girl in the Sylvanus Brown House, which was built in 1758. I had a family come in, a couple and a child. They asked me about the reenactor in the Brown House, Sylvanus Brown House. And they told me she was a young girl, looked about 10 or 11, and she was dressed in old-fashioned clothes. And I said, "Well, did she speak to you?" And they said, "No, she was in the room with the loom, and she was totally silent, just moved through there." And they said, "We looked again, and she was gone." I let them say the whole thing, and I said, "Oh, well, we don't have a reenactor." So that was when I first hearing, and this girl figure had been seen before I started working there. I heard reports of that. So there seemed to be three master spirits or main spirits. It's the little girl, Becca or Rebecca, and the Sylvanus Brown house in the cottage. In Slater Mill proper, it is a little boy named Jacob, and that name was revealed through an obelisk and EVP recording. And there's the shadow ghost, shadow person in the stone Wilkinson Mill. We don't know why he's there, how he got there. Yeah, it makes no sense. I mean, we can postulate that it was some man who worked there. Maybe he met with an accident or lost his life there. Or maybe he just worked there for so long he doesn't want to leave, thinks he's still working there. He's also called Victor because that name manifested in an EVP recorded in that building. So we've got Becca, Jacob, and Victor, which is pretty neat that we can actually attach names to these spirits now.
Yeah, let me ask you something
about their business.
Yeah,
let me ask you something about that.
Can't explain
if I can. So the shadow ghost there, you've named Victor because I came across as an EVP. It seems to me that some of these shadow entities we can attribute to a human spirit, but then there's other shadow entities that we can attribute to something that's a little bit more, that's more interdimensional and probably wasn't human. Is there a way to know the difference between that two, or is it just come down to investigating and trying to figure it out over maybe multiple investigations?
Carl yes, more the latter. Yeah. I do, but you go ahead, Carl.
Well, it can be difficult to tell because if you have what we call classic poltergeist activity and you've got an apparition being seen and it looks human, it's hard to say whether that's demonic or what. But a demon haunting will usually reveal itself as such. It has an agenda, and it's usually not a good one, not a favorable one. But these spirits seem to be basically going about their business. We got the name Victor from a residual haunt, an atmospheric haunt that was recorded on masculine voice. This was recorded in the water wheel pit and the power source in that stone mill in the Wilkinson Mill. And it says, it can clearly be heard saying, "I'll go up to Victor and get someone." So it's just a playback. So you call it Victor. Whether they're human or not, I think they are human-generated spirits, ghosts, if you will. But ghosts are very mysterious in themselves. I mean, how can these entities be talking amongst themselves and to us? And apparently they are when we record them, seem interested in us. I wouldn't agree that they're all demonic masquerading.
Right.
And if they are, then to what purpose? But it's things we just can't answer. We know for a fact they are there, and they operate through that environment, and they are sometimes interactive with we the living.
Right.
And with each other.
Keith, you said you had a different answer to this, so I'm wondering what your different answer is.
Yes, well, of course, my stance I would take is, of course, in the Bible, in the New Testament, 1 John 4, it says to test the spirits to see if they are of God, and that's the premise I would take. I would not automatically assume it is a young child spirit, even though that's how it may appear. I mean, certainly if I thought it was a young child, I would pray for that child. I would try to help that child, but I would do so in the name of God and see how it reacts. Usually when I've done that, the activity just stops. It just stops. Excuse the pun, just stops dead. The activity just completely stops. But I know there was one story, one of our staff members, one of our senior staff members years ago, was the last one in the building of Slater Mill, and he was trying to alarm it. He couldn't get the alarm to work. So he called the alarm company, and they used their sensor, and the gentleman on the other end of the phone said, "Are you sure you're alone in that building?" And he said, "Yes, I've just been downstairs, I've checked, I'm alone in this building." And the man in the office was pretty puzzled because he said, well, our sensors are showing you've got a room full of people walking around upstairs. And that's when he knew he was alone in the building. So it's kind of unnerving. So he just alarmed it, and the technician came out the next day, tested the alarm. There was nothing wrong with it the next day. So that was a mystery that was never solved.
Why do you think, and I mean, I understand it's unnerving, but why do you think it is? I mean, why do you think that people are so afraid of spirits or ghosts? I'm not, you know, I mean, they're just like me without a body. They're a person. And I'm trying to wrap my brain around why it's still so frightening for others. I can't understand it.
Yeah, it seems to be an inherent fear, or inherent fear of the unknown, what it is. And I mean, most people, as you know, most people, not like you, most people, if they turn around and see a spirit, they're going to pass out or scream. And it's just a terrifying, terrifying experience. And it seems like a lot of spirits are trying to engender that fear. Not all spirits engender fear, obviously, but it's just like a primal nature to fear that unknown aspect. Like a lot of people have fear of snakes, you know, because you don't know what the snake is going to do unless you're very, very familiar with snakes, and you know what kind it is, that it's not dangerous or it is. And but it is true. A lot of people, most people, I think, have that primal fear of the really that unknown aspect of it's like a self-preservation, immediate self-preservation. And of course, I personally would take the stance of testing the spirits. Just do not automatically believe every spirit simply because it looks like dead Uncle Fred or a little girl, a trusting child. And one aspect is very unnerving is, I've not dealt with this as yet, but of course, I'm sure you're familiar with it, the black-eyed children.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the black-eyed children. That is
it's
very
one of those few aspects of the paranormal that still really spooks me, black-eyed children.
Yes,
there are a lot of creepy tales about those things, yeah.
Yeah, and what they seem to want to do is be invited. They're trying to talk you into inviting them in. Again, I haven't experienced one as yet, but certainly they're reported to try to get invitations, so you invite them into your home with your family, or if you live alone, just let them in. And that's what they seem to be, the typical spirit that let me in at your window. And so in that situation, I would certainly again test the spirits, of course.
Well, I mean, and I live on the second floor, so if anything is at my window.
That's a telltale sign right there.
Yep.
About the only thing getting through my window is Gerard Butler. Okay, other than that.
Well, he climbs well.
Nice.
And augment your fantasy.
Yeah.
If you're hearing this, Gerard.
And on that note, you know what, guys?
Going out.
And on
You're
that
not going
note,
to say it's quitting time.
Yeah, it's,
no.
It is we're actually past the hour mark. It has gone quick, but
oh my word! If I could interject one thought, I think it's I think spirits are so terrifying, and even animals seem to be responsive and afraid of them. They shiver, they growl, hiss. I think it's the element of the unexpected, because we're scared that we're going to turn around and see someone standing there, someone who doesn't belong, someone out of time. And that's unnerving. If you knew when they were going to show up, it wouldn't be quite so frightening.
Yeah, I don't like it when they walk past my shower.
There's a classic scenario.
Yeah, that's right. Anybody who's seen Psycho has that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, we're not doing the shower. Keith, final thoughts?
No. Well, I want to thank you for having me on your show, and God bless you. I'm looking very much forward to seeing you both when you come up for Ocean State Paracon, and that will be a reunion. I'm very, very glad that we'll be able to go into that house. I very much want to be with you when you go. You both go in there.
Yeah,
too.
Yeah, definitely.
And if I meet Gerard Butler, I'll send him your way. Don't worry.
Please do.
I will.
That's all I'm asking.
Right?
He can show up when you don't expect him. You suddenly turn around and he's there.
Yeah.
And
You know what?
Keith,
I'm okay with that.
and Keith, we'll have to have you back on soon since this turned out to be
Certainly.
a combined episode.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Carl
Certainly.
hijacked you a little bit, but it was very interesting to have the perspective from both of you as to what we saw on that episode
Yes,
the
right.
other day. So and I do
Well,
want to,
because we were both very much a part of that. Yes.
yeah, which was great, and I was happy that they told that part of the story correct, that you guys were in there
Yes.
before the Warrens, and 'cause
Yes.
a lot of people did
Yeah,
not
it's a
know
measure
that.
of clarification and vindication in a sense.
Mhm.
Really was. So
As well it should be.
and I'm gonna plug one of Keith's books here, Paranormal Realities 3. Go ahead and check out Keith's books. I was kind of pressed for time and I didn't link everything in the description, but I will go back later and do that. So for those watching the replay, hit the links below and check out Keith's book, Paranormal Realities. And I know you guys check out those links because I think it was Robert Hanna that bought Carl's book last week. So check out their books.
Yes,
They're awesome.
appreciate it.
So, all right, everybody. Coming up next, switch over to the Facebook channel, facebook.com/Haunted Road Media, because we're going to be doing Beyond the Shadows over there. We'll go ahead and let the Johnson brothers go, and we'll get to some shout-outs here, and then, clean up and go to Beyond the Shadows. So,
Yes.
Keith and Carl, thank you both very much for joining us tonight.
Well, our pleasure. You
Thank
may
you,
banish
guys.
the brothers. You're welcome.
And we'll see y'all
Take care.
soon.
See you
Yes,
soon.
we'll see
Oh,
you
yes,
soon.
that you will. Make a point of it. Thank you, guys.
Yes, have a great night.
Bye-bye.
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 Good night, Keith.